Hello and welcome to the Nerdom podcast, your one-stop shop for all things cinema, nerddom, and geek. I am your host, Cody Weiland. I know that took a minute to say. I just had to catch up on my breath. I'm not joined by Austin this week. He's going to be out for a little bit. In the meantime, I am bringing you guys who are watching on YouTube video attached to the actual podcast. So, yay! For the rest of you guys who listen on Spotify and Apple Podcast or whatever other platform it is, nothing's changing for you guys. Literally, this is just for YouTube. But this week, I am talking about one of my favorite movie franchises that's a little hit and miss. A little bit better than Indiana Jones in terms of their success rate, because Indiana Jones has like an average of like 50-50 whether or not it's going to be a good movie, is Jurassic Park. The movie that defined what Hollywood could do with great CGI and VFX. It asked and answered the question, what if we could bring dinosaurs back to life? An interesting idea, right? Whether your only interaction with Cretaceous beasts were from plastic toys or the bones displayed at museums, it's always been in the back of our minds whether or not we wanted to see what this could do or happen or what the implications would be. And this is kind of explored a little bit more in Jurassic World, but not in the way that we would have preferred. But Jurassic Park capitalizes on it. It captured movie critics and audiences alike, and there really is no debate that this movie defined a generation. However, I'm going to be splitting this topic into two different episodes. So, one's going to be talking about the Jurassic Park series, which is Jurassic Park 1, 2, 3, Lost World, 3. I forget if that one had a name. But Jurassic World is going to have their own episode because it brings up a topic that I think should be addressed directly, but it has its own problems that the original three didn't have. While it does share some similarities, it has new concepts that really need to be brought out in a different conversation. So I will be bringing you that episode this week because I'm a little late on the posting schedule. So, without further ado, let's dive on into it. Jurassic Park was created by... I'm going to have to split this part, aren't I? Yeah. We start with Jurassic Park 1. Okay. We start with Jurassic Park 1, numero uno. This is where we meet Steven Spielberg's fetish with big bright lights. Now, if you've ever seen a Quentin Tarantino movie, you know he shoots a lot of feet. With Spielberg, I feel like he has an infatuation with bright lights behind his subjects. Like, seriously, look at any of his shots. You're going to see, like, floodlights pointed directly at the camera. Like, he just discovered how you can do a lens flare, and he's continually trying to do it. Granted, I like the style. It's actually kind of cool. It has that kind of space age feel to it. You can notice it in E.T., and it really drives home the point. And you notice it prominently in the opening scene where pretty much every OSHA standard has just been violated because all these workers at Jurassic Park are loading in this dinosaur. Unfortunately, it gets caught and it bites down on one of the workers, which I feel like the entire process could have been automated. I don't feel like someone should have been up there just opening the cage. I don't think zoos even have that anymore. But it was the 1990s, so I gotta give it a pass on that. But this guy gets eaten, and it gets brought up again with the lawyer and how he's there on behalf of the investors to determine whether or not this is a viable company to invest in or that it's safe to invest in. Otherwise, Hammond's going to lose the park. And this part is kind of what is weird to me. Because a guy just died on your property. And if you remember Tiger King, it's probably the same thing. You can compare the two. Tiger King is Jurassic Park on a different level. Because with Tiger King, you know he's shady. You know it's absolutely shady. But with Jurassic Park, just replace tigers with T-Rexes, and you pretty much have the same thing. There's a different level of shadiness to it, but Hammond is driving the point home the entire movie about how he spared no expense. Oh, no expense taken. It's state of the art. I've been there for every dinosaur birth. But in all honesty, so has Tiger King. I forget what his name is. Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic was there. He was with the tigers for a long time, except what he was doing was illegal. Super illegal. Hammond wanted to open up his own park, and damn, if Hammond was around today, he would have saw Tiger King and said, "That's a good man. That's a good man right there." But no, Tiger King is this stark contrast to Jurassic Park. And that's about the last I'm going to be talking about Tiger King, I hope. You know, Tiger King's kind of weird. It'll pop up where you least expect it. But we continue on, where we meet Alan Grant and Ellie Sadler. But these two characters are kind of... it's the regular will they, won't they relationship. Will they get a relationship or won't they? And honestly, I think in this movie, it could have been handled better, but at least we had it. You know, it was a 90s cliche that it panned out, you know. I really have nothing to complain about it until we get to the third movie. But I'm not going to be talking about that right now. That's for later on in the episode. I will come back to it. Who are approached by Hammond. He wants them to come to the park and sign off on it because they're paleontologists, and you know, in terms of OSHA standards, I guess you'd want the authenticity to be certified. You know, not an OSHA inspector. I get that he has a lawyer there, but I feel like there's some other experts that really should have been there, like Ian Malcolm. He's a chaostician, which I get that you need because you're trying to figure out every problem that would arise at the park, but get an OSHA guy in there because actually, you know what? You probably couldn't get an OSHA guy in there because that's an island off in the Pacific. You really couldn't have not Pacific. Maybe I forget where the island is specifically, but it's an island. So my best guess is that it would be out of the U.S.'s jurisdiction, but at the same time, you need a lawyer to be there. It's confusing, and I don't think they ever address this head on, the legal implications of Jurassic Park. But he does get the Ian Malcolm, Laura Dean, Ellie Saylor, Alan Grant, all going to the park to check it out. And to Hammond's knowledge, the park's fine. Except when it's not. Because little does he know, we have Jerry Seinfeld's nemesis working at this place as his security. Wayne Knight as Dennis Nedry. And honestly, this guy gets axed really quickly. Like, he is set up to be doing corporate espionage for InGen, which wants to take these dinosaur embryos and steal them, essentially creating their own Jurassic Park or creating biological weapons or doing some other stuff that makes no sense whatsoever, or make Jurassic World. But the thing about Dennis Nedry, Wayne Knight's character, is that he's kind of like the domino, setting up everything to fail. But at the same time, you can kind of forgive this movie for setting up this scenario because it gets set up multiple times throughout the series, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Is that there's a pretty major flaw in their reasoning, or there's a major flaw in the security network, or there's a major flaw in how they have their operation set up, which Hammond has all automated so that you don't have to have as many workers on site as you would need at a traditional park. And that sort of makes sense, except for the sense that Disney has workers at all their attractions. Granted, they don't have the engineers there at all times, and there's a level of automation there, but he still has the workers there. It's not like he completely gets rid of everybody. And when you set up everything in an automated fashion, it's much easier to do today, mind you, but setting up this automated network didn't really make sense for me. But in the 90s, they had limited technology. It's much different than it is today. So I don't blame them on that front. What I am trying to get to is, after we see that he's making this deal, we go back to the island where the helicopter's landing with Hammond and the rest of the assessors, the examiners, who arrive at this park. And I just have to say, this park is amazing. This is exactly what I would love to see at a dinosaur theme park. I mean, I love theme parks. Right now, it's kind of difficult to go anywhere like Disneyland or Universal Studios or Knott's Berry Farm, for that matter. But I love theme parks so much, and having this place set up in the way that it is, it just really captures you, and you can feel like you're there. One of the happiest moments I ever had was going to Universal Studios, the Jurassic World section. And as much crap as I put on Jurassic World, I will say that Jurassic World at Universal was awesome. It felt like I was actually there. I would have, this is just a me thing, I would have liked to see the actual Jurassic Park set around, not like kind of like that 90s setup. But I get that they had to modernize and kind of sell their own movie. But Jurassic Park is all about that nostalgia. It's a 90s movie, to be sure, and when you see it in person, you just feel like it's the coolest place in the world. And it's sold even more, even as they go through like the main gate, which, again, I wish they made more prominent at Universal. You go through the main gate, and when they do that like stop take where he takes off the glasses looking at the brachiosauruses, and it's like, holy crap, it's actually real. And the VFX in that shot are actually kind of impressive. Granted, it's still a 90s VFX shot, so you can absolutely tell it's fake. You can tell like the grandeur of this image, and it's just walking around like a regular animal. It's just so freaking cool. And then combine that with the animatronics that they did, because, mind you, they didn't go full CG. This wasn't like 2008 James Cameron, where they took the concept and just completely went into the CG department. They actually had real components, which is kind of a downfall of Jurassic World, which I'll get to later. But when they had these puppets in there, and these animatronics that the cast and directors could actually interact with, it created that sense that, holy crap, this was real. Because there's one scene in particular where they have the Triceratops, and she's on her side, and they're just trying to figure out what's wrong with her. They're actually interacting with a puppet that's breathing. It's so freaking cool. It makes the entire concept even more legitimate. And that's kind of what Hollywood has strayed away from these days, going full CG. And the thing about CG is that it makes your work easier, but at the same time, it's taking away from that realistic feeling that you had with the original movies. Like, I'm going to riff on Jurassic World again. Jurassic World had this concept where if you can do it in post, then it's fine. If we can get some guy in a green screen or a mocap suit acting out the scene, it's going to be fine. But that's not how it works at all. You kind of lose all of that when you do that, because these actors are acting against a ball on a stick or just a guy in a costume. And in some movies, that can work if you have the right talent in them. Like in Lord of the Rings, you had Andy Serkis as Gollum, and Elijah Wood and Sean Astin. They both were with what's his name, Andy Serkis, during the filming. And Andy Serkis the entire time was using the voice of Gollum, like, Habitat, I want my precious. And honestly, that sold it so much, because you were only, again, it was silly that he was in a mocap suit the entire time, but you were interacting with the voice, and the voice is kind of what sells it. With dinosaurs, you kind of lose that a little bit. You might get like the sound that they're making, but you really don't have anything to act off of, because you look at a guy in the suit, and it doesn't register. This is kind of the problem that Harrison Ford had in the new movie he just had with Saint Bernard, where the Saint Bernard was completely CG animated. He was just on set with an animal, not an animal, with a puppeteer the entire time, in a mocap suit. And it lost a lot of credibility. It didn't seem like Harrison Ford was acting with a dog. It felt like Harrison Ford was just on another movie, and that might just be Harrison Ford these days. Let's face it, the guy's old. But again, that happens with everybody. If you don't have something to hold on to, something tangible, then you're less likely to want to interact with it. You see this all the time with just CG in general. Unless you can have it interacting off of each other with animators that understand motion and how expressions are supposed to be, like in James Cameron's Avatar, you can tell where the emotion is because they have people who know how these people are interacting with one another. But with the main actors, like the real people actors, they don't have that luxury. They're interacting with maybe a puppet, maybe a person in a green screen or mocap suit, and it just sucks. I'm just going to be frank with it. It just sucks. But I digress. Jurassic Park keeps going, and it just this is the best part that I think is in the entire movie. When they're in the hatchery center, and they're talking about how the dinosaurs with BD Wong, BD Wong, by the way, is freaking awesome in these movies. But I think they really should have put more time into him, because there was a payoff in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom that didn't really pan out, in my opinion, because there wasn't really a lot of attention on BD Wong. Like, literally, he's in Jurassic Park for one movie. He's mentioned a couple times in the other ones, with no appearances. And then he shows up in the fifth one, and everybody's like, oh my god, it's BD Wong. I mean, Henry Wu. And everybody's like, sure, he was in the other movies. He's still alive, I guess. Sorry, that was kind of dark. Richard Attenborough died shortly after the second movie. But BD Wong was, in my opinion, he was a good casting choice, except they needed to put more time into him. They just took him and that said, okay, we got what we needed. You're good. And I think they really should have spent more time with him. Like, seriously. He's BD freaking Wong, man. He was in Law and Order. Again, I digress. And then you have Samuel Mudda Jackson in his role as just a guy operating a computer, which on one hand seems kind of like wasted potential, because while this was a PG-13 movie, they weren't really capitalizing on the one F-bomb you could give people like today. Like today, you can get away with one F-bomb in a PG-13 picture with it still maintaining its PG rating. And it would have been so freaking awesome to give Samuel Jackson his one F-bomb in this movie. Just like somewhere, like, hold on to your beeping butts, and like turns on the park. That would, again, that's a small thing, but I think it would have been kind of cool. And gotta give him a hand here because he kind of loses his later. But Samuel Jackson brings in a kind of, I'm not going to say it's his best role, but honestly, it was kind of fun to see him in there. I would have preferred to see him in more Jurassic Park movies, but again, what can you do when you kill off his character? Again, getting ahead of myself. But they go through the hatchery scene, and they have these animatronics in there, the little puppets with the tiny velociraptors, which, again, this part always made me kind of weirded out, because why didn't Alan Grant recognize this as a velociraptor? It could have been just like the shock factor of, oh, I'm still going through the fact that there's actual dinosaurs here in the park, and not realizing what an actual velociraptor looks like. But you can kind of tell what these are. And the look that he gives B.D. Wong when he says, oh, it's a velociraptor, is kind of weird to me, because it's like, you dare bring these velociraptors back to life? When they've already admitted that they have T-Rexes on the premises, and he's like, oh, still shocked, but like not, oh my god, what did you do? Again, it could be because that was his field to study, but he does bring in a kind of charisma that I clinged on to, just personally. So then after we go through the hatchery scene, which honestly has a cute little dinosaur hatching out of his egg. Honestly, I would love to see a movie where they went through the whole process of hatching the eggs and like maturing them and seeing them grow up. It's kind of like having like a little dog that can eat you in about a year. You know, again, dogs can usually eat you, but I have Chihuahuas, so it's going to take them significantly longer to eat me than, let's say, Saint Bernard. So again, weird comparison, but it could happen. So after the hatchery scene, we go to the dinner, where they continue talking about the implications of Jurassic Park, and Ian Malcolm says the famous line, you spent so much time trying to figure out if you could do it, you never asked the question if you should. And this is a moral question that's kind of brought up in the rest of the movies, and it seems like the Jurassic Park movies were going to make the smart decision and say, you know what, we're going to take a stand right here. Dinosaurs should have stayed dead. Except we have another 5 movies lined up, and we're going to keep milking this cash cow as long as we can. Which always bummed me out, because if you're going to do another Jurassic Park movie, you got to make it different. Which they kind of did with Jurassic World. And they... Again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but needless to say, he is sort of right in his reasoning that they should leave these dinosaurs to die. This is not the environment they were created in. They were created in a pre-human environment where the ecosystem itself was dramatically different. Just when we were around as Neanderthals, the world was closer together. You can see it as tectonic plates shifted. The world got farther and slightly closer apart, together and apart, because, again, flat earthers, don't at me right now, but the world shifted slightly, so it got farther apart, depending on what kind of map you looked at. But you see, like, the U.S. gets closer to the Asian continent, and it gets farther away from Africa and Europe, Spain, Britain. But originally, this entire area, right next to U.S. and Africa and Europe, was closer together. There was even land masses that were around far before we could catalog them, and we're only able to know about it because of extensive research that scientists have done. But that was the environment that the dinosaurs were in. They were here before we were, except they went through a mass extinction event, which kind of happens again later on. Again, getting ahead of myself. Sorry about that. But the dinosaurs were absolutely right to go extinct because they weren't going to survive on their own anyway. Because either they stay around or we don't. Because, let's face it, they're going to want to eat something, and that T-Rex ain't stopping for no one. Just, again, I'm going to give some hate towards the sequels of Jurassic Park, but that part kind of made me smile when I saw there was a T-Rex in San Diego. I was like, okay. And in the second movie, I was like, I get it. I kind of get it. I would have preferred if we focused on the dinosaur actually being in civilization more than them being on a deserted island. I would have been like, we could have done better with that. But again, we continue from there next morning, either next morning or later that day, to their guided tour. And this is where things start going wrong. So on the guided tour, I forgot to mention, Hammond invites his grandchildren to the event. And I'm like, seriously, there's some major design flaws here that people are kind of glaring over. And when it's the original, there's more leeway when you can do stupid stuff like this. Except Jurassic Park kept doing these things. And that's one of the biggest things that I am freaking upset about. They keep bringing kids to this place. I get it. In the first movie, you got this guy who owns a amusement park. And if I was the guy in charge of Disney, I would have been like, the day that we're closed, I'm going to bring my kids over to the park. And there will be no lines, no crowds, and nothing there to get in their way. And that's kind of a cool experience. I would be like, okay, that's pretty awesome. But in Jurassic Park, where a guy literally just died and there's a safety inspector right next to you, you kind of have to say, okay, so after the inspection, I'll fly him out and we'll have fun. And they kept doing this. Ian Malcolm brings a kid in the second movie, and then in the third movie, there's a kid that survives on his own on the island. And I'm like, can we just can we please adapt to these situations? Because I feel like we're just retreading on the same territory here. Because even in Jurassic World, where they're supposed to have worked out the kinks of this, they still do these same problems, the same situations, and it's just infuriating. Because they drive home the point that dinosaurs adapt. But it feels like the dinosaurs are doing the same exact thing, and we're doing the same exact thing, and they're just adapting to the freaking pattern that we're putting down. What it would be kind of cool to see is if these dinosaurs are adapting to the changes that we made. And again, with Jurassic Park, it's the original. You can get away with this stuff. But in the other movies, though, seriously, we gotta change this stuff. So, after that entire altercation happens with the guided tour, they continue down it, and they find the Triceratops that's sick. And it's kind of cool, because in this scene, and I'm saying a lot, Jeff Goldblum, I'm saying a freaking ton right now. I don't know why. Jeff Goldblum takes it. He goes full Goldblum in this scene. He's like, yes, and he's pulling off his pure Jeff Goldblum flirting here, which today I don't like to see, but in 90s it was so strange and so out of place that people were kind of captured by it. Even Jeff Goldblum looks back at the role and he's like, oh, yes, that was one of my best roles, yes. It's very, very, very good. But they go through the Triceratops. They talked with the guy that's there, I don't want to call him a zookeeper, because dinosaur keeper? Park keeper? I don't know. They talked to him, and they determined that the Triceratops was eating some poisonous fruit, and the poisonous fruit was causing it to get sick. and go into some major poisoning. So, the only way to figure that out is for them to sift through the scat, the poop, the number 2 that is in a huge mound, which makes sense because it's a park, but they really couldn't have gotten rid of it. I guess, listen, I don't know the ins and outs of the Jurassic Park industry, but I feel like they could have gotten rid of it in a more divisive method. So, after that business, Elliot stays behind. Ellie stays behind with the park ranger, and the rest of the group goes forward on the tour into late night, which didn't make sense to me watching the movie, because I get that they kind of broke down when Nedry kicked off his hacking software, but there's late night tours? That didn't make sense to me. I know that they had like night vision goggles in the car too, but still, night tours? Not even Disney's open at night. I mean, it is to an extent, but it's not going to go all night. They close before midnight. It's not like they stay open the entire time. But they saw. And, oh my god, this scene is one of the best in the entire freaking movie, because it set up so much suspense, and this is where it pays off. Because when they can't get the park back online, the electric fence that keeps these dinosaurs locked up goes out. And the tension that's brought on by the T-Rex is so freaking good. You're just watching it at home. Turn off the lights and watch that scene. It's so freaking good, because you can feel the suspense building as the water starts rippling at every step. And you start thinking, could it be? Could it be? And yes, it's the freaking T-Rex coming at these cars like a freaking T-Rex. And you're just in your seat and you're like, holy crap! Even the animatronics that they use for it. And again, this was freaking awesome. They had an actual T-Rex head created for this effect, going down onto the car, trying to get at the 2 kids. It was just, you feared for this, because they were actually interacting with it, rather than CG, where it's like, oh no, the 3D model's trying to get them. Oh no. With this, there was an actual force behind the glass, like scraping at it, and it felt so real. And I wanted to see more of that, and they delivered big time. And I freaking love this scene. So this scene always gets me. And Grant has the idea of lighting a flare and like distracting it, getting it away, which makes sense. You know, bright light kind of distracts any animal, as he throws it off into the distance, and the T-Rex is like, oh, gotta go get it. But it's just a bright light. Okay. And then Jeff Goldblum gets his own light, and seriously, that part always kind of felt dumb. I get it. Jurassic Park's built on the principles that people act dumb. But Jeff Goldblum grabs a flare and tries his own thing. I get it. You were trying to do the good thing, but it didn't work out at all. So he gets knocked off to the side. And honestly, the Jurassic Park movies has like a record of being super cruel to their side characters. Like Jurassic World, I think, is the worst offender, but this is pretty close. The T-Rex, while the lawyer's like quivering in fear on the toilet, which, granted, might be convenient because he's probably crapping his pants right now, and being on the toilet probably helps. That T-Rex just bites down on him, and honestly, I didn't want to see the guy go like that. It felt cruel. But it's a monster. It's essentially a monster movie, chaos movie. It has to happen. There has to be carnage, and the rest of the group continues to evade this creature's rampage. as Grant grabs the granddaughter. I don't know why I said niece. Grabs the granddaughter out of the car that's being smushed as we speak, until the T-Rex turns back to them and starts marching towards them to get any more food that he can. And again, I feel like this was just panic in Grant's eyes, but he says that the T-Rex can only see movement, which to me didn't make sense, because how do you know this? Did you do extensive research on dinosaurs? I mean, you did, but that was bone structure. You did nothing to do with the internal mechanisms of a dinosaur. You never dissected one. So that one kind of didn't make sense to me. Again, there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me in the movies, but it's suspension of disbelief. It carries a lot of weight in movies and cinema, and you think about it, there's plot holes in everything you like, but you choose to overlook them because at the end of the day, you see an awesome story that you want to see the ending to. And when you have this many plot holes in Jurassic Park, it's made up for by the suspense and the tension that's brought up and a premise that's freaking awesome. So they can do this kind of ring around the rosy around the car as he's spinning it around until they take the fence, drop off into the T-Rex enclosure by 50-foot drop, which didn't make sense to me. And this is the thing that most people pick on, because how did the T-Rex sneak up on them by not climbing up that thing, or how did they even climb it up? But it could have been just an earlier break, or it doesn't make sense going past that, because I'm going to be nitpicking Jurassic World later, and I'm not going to do it right now. They get off by traversing down, rappelling using the fence, and they're almost in the clear until they realize that T-Rex is pushing that car off the cliff. And the car keeps going down and down and down until it hits a tree, stopping in the tree. And Grant's he's trying to calm this extremely frantic girl, and he goes up to the tree to go grab the brother. And this leads to another thing where you thought you were going to get a break. The car starts going down the tree as they're trying to climb down it, until ultimately they hide in the root system while the car just into the ground. And honestly, this was so freaking cool. This entire series of events, just one after the other, were kind of killer. After that, we had them going through and interacting with the herbivores in the same enclosure. Listen, I've played a lot of Jurassic World Park Builder, and this doesn't make sense. Whenever I put a herbivore next to a carnivore, the herbivore is always dead. Even if I put other carnivores next to the other carnivore, they're always dead. But I'm not picking on it right now, because it's a wild park. Everything's intermingling with each other. So I get it. It's interacting with each other. That's how it's supposed to be. And they have fun with the brachiosauruses. And they have the actual brachiosaurus made. And while it does look a little cheesy because it's the 90s, it was still there. It felt real. It felt like you could reach out and touch it. And that's what mattered to them. Then we cut back to Ellie and the rest of them trying to figure out what's going on with the park, until they figure out that Nedry isn't coming back and that the park is offline unless they can reroute some things and escape efficiently. So Ellie goes along with Hunter Guy, which he is Bob Peck, Robert Mulder. And he kind of gave way to a lot of memes before they were memes. Clever girl is forever in the vocabulary of any movie lover of Jurassic Park. Because for a hunter, he's kind of killed in really quick fashion. I get it. There's some less climactic deaths later on, but still, for a guy that's built up to be this cool hunter guy, you kind of kill him off really quickly. And then, of course, they go out, try and search for Grant and the rest of them. They find Ian Malcolm, who's done a tourniquet on his leg, which, okay, all right, that's some pretty standard safety. I'm surprised that this movie thought of that. They load him up onto the Jeep, and then this also sparked the entire sexy Goldblum. That image is forever ingrained in the people of the 90s. And even today. So, again, and they don't catch a break either. The T-Rex is hot on their tail again, trying to get that Goldblum as they drive off into the distance, making sure that there's enough space in between the two of them so that that dinosaur cannot get them. And, oh my god, that's such a cool chase scene. Even there's some comedic timing to it too, like the T-Rex in the rearview mirror. Some objects might be larger than they appear. That's pretty funny to me. It's just those simple moments that really you catch on to. And as they're driving away, we cut back to Grant as they're trying to get back to the main park, and they meet back up with the hunter and Ellie and everybody like that, and they make their way back to the main building, where it's revealed that Hammond is having a complete breakdown right now, like, crap, this is not what I meant to do. And everybody's just trying to figure out what to do. So they figure out that they can take the helicopter out of here fast enough so that they don't have to deal with this anymore. However, in order to do that, they need to rewrite the security system or something like that. So, being the stereotypical character, Samuel Jackson says, I'll go over to the power station and reroute power. And I'm like, it was nice knowing you, buddy. Because this was a time in horror movies where there's entire sessions, there's entire, episodes that of people talking about this very topic, about black people getting axed off in horror movies. And I hate that stereotype a lot, because with what's his name? Not Keenan Peele. Michael Key or Keenan Peele? With the movie Us, they set up this plot, and the main characters are diverse, and it's actually really good. It's super huge, and it goes against the stereotypes that were already made, but this was in the 90s, so they were still playing on those stereotypes. And you see this in all types of horror movies, whether it's The Shining, or Friday the 13th. It all plays out the same way, and Samuel Jackson, he just had to go out like that. And when they... Again, I hate seeing Samuel Jackson like this. When Ellie goes to reroute the power after he's gone for way too long, she finds the arm of Samuel Jackson, which, again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because how did the Raptors get into the powers, into this place? They probably just ripped, again, suspension of disbelief. It's powerful. So, she manages to make it out with her life. But the same can't be said for Robert. The hunter, the Australian hunter guy, puts his hat off to the distance, thinking that's going to trick the Raptors. And he's like, oh, I got him now. And then the Raptors appears on his left shoulder, and he's like, what's up, Alan? And Jurassic Park, again, that's, of all the things in Jurassic Park, I think that's the worst thing they've ever done. In Jurassic Park 3, they had the talking dinosaur look at Grant and say, Alan. And I was like, why did we need that? Nothing in the tone suggested that. But, she's like, clever girl. And then the entire Raptors start feeding on him. And it's like, okay, He's super dead. So everybody gets back into this main security station, and they go into a series of cat and mouse games. Raptors chasing the kids, Raptors trying to get into the security room, Raptors trying to get everywhere. And these are the scenes where I'm like, okay, this is pretty dang cool. Because this entire movie, there's suspense built in just trying to get at these people. And nowhere better does it appear than in these moments where these raptors are hunting them down like animals. Like, they are the prey now. It's always been this way, and they're just realizing it. And finally, these raptors are in one of the best climaxes I've ever seen. The raptors have them surrounded, and the T-Rex, like a freaking ninja, not alerting them at anything, again, another plot hole, comes in and takes them all on, it's just freaking awesome. Because not only did we get a T-Rex scene just being a bad A, we get a T-Rex scene of that T-Rex going up against like pretty much 5-1 odds. And it's just so freaking cool. And they have more moments like this in the rest of the movies. Except for freaking the third one where they introduce this new dinosaur, which I don't give a crap about. Give me the freaking T-Rex. The T-Rex is the main star of these movies. He's the guy on my hat. He's the guy on the logo. He's the guy on every freaking trailer. You can't one-up him. And Jurassic World, for all of its flaws, makes up for the third movie's decision by having this fight between him and the new dinosaur that they make. But the T-Rex is always going to be the star in these movies, and believe it or not, the entire time I'm watching this, I'm rooting for that T-Rex, even though I know as soon as he's done with the Raptors, he's going after Grant and the rest of them. But fortunately enough, they managed to escape, getting onto the helicopter, flying from the island, looking back as the theme starts playing, and honestly, these chaos movies, you've seen them before. Pierce Brosnan was in that volcano movie. And throughout these movies, you know something bad is going to happen. You know something bad is going to happen. It's the 90s. And you think, oh man, it's going to happen here. It's going to happen here. Until it doesn't. And then it happens the minute afterwards, the minute before. Surprising you and catching you off guard. And that's what this movie did so well. It set up this world that people wanted to be in and not be in at the same time. They were thrilled. I was thrilled watching this movie. And then they come back with the sequels. Now, I'm going to talk about this briefly compared to me summing up Jurassic Park 1. Because these movies, this is kind of my whole point. It's really a paint-by-numbers system after that movie. It's always a chaos movie afterwards. It's always determining what can go wrong and what is going to go wrong. And honestly, I just want to see something different. I want to see something different. Because with the second movie, you have Ian Malcolm going back to the island because his girlfriend is on the island. So he has to go and save her and ensure that the dinosaurs aren't running amok, which they are. And even that seemed kind of weird. That was kind of the plot already in the first movie. You had people going back to the island after something bad has already happened and warning signs have already been put up. And you're kind of going up against the same people. This time you have InGen being a more direct role by trying to actively get the formulas left in the breeding center. Which, if that's the breeding island, why did we have a breeding station over on the other island? The sense starts getting lost more and more with each installment. And I wish I could say it. Jeff Goldblum couldn't even save this movie. And it's by no means as bad as 3. At least when I was watching this one, I had the inclination that they had the script down. They had everything right. They had everything planned. The third one just was weird. It traded in intelligence of the dinosaurs for scare factors, like jump scares and stuff like that, and it just didn't make sense. And at the end of the day, that's what this series has come down to. It hasn't been always the moneymaker. Even in the first movie, there's flaws. But despite all those flaws, we saw something original. We saw something that hadn't been done before. We've never seen dinosaurs come onto the big screen and interact with characters like that. We were there for the spectacle. It's kind of the same reason why we watched James Cameron's Avatar. It's not because of the story, because, let's face it, that entire movie was Pocahontas. It was because of the visual effects. And what made Jurassic Park stand out is that it had a good story and really good visual effects. And even as there were slight flaws, like that climax with the T-Rex versus the Velociraptors, if you pause it at a specific point, they forgot to animate one frame of the T-Rex. You go look for it on Google, on YouTube, you'll find what I'm talking about. And it just... It solidified why people wanted to see dinosaurs on the big screen. Because it felt so real. And at the end of the day, I know I've said this phrase multiple times already, we want to see these dinosaurs in real life. And as much as it pains us to admit it, it may be a bad idea. And it invokes these philosophical discussions about whether or not you should actually bring endangered species back from the brink of endangerment. Because today's species, who are endangered because of us humans, they're endangered for a different reason than it is for animals that have been endangered because of climate change. Like the dinosaurs, they were endangered because of some cataclysmic event. What was that event? We don't know. But that was nature dealing with dinosaurs. And by us bringing them back, we invoke the same mass extinction event. Nobody asked the question whether or not we should have dinosaurs. But we really should start asking why we have so many of these movies. Because in Fallen Kingdom, they asked the question, and they answer it. Congress answers the question that they should not rescue these dinosaurs. But BS comes in at every possible angle. And that's really what these movies are built on. People making stupid decisions. Samuel Jackson going to the power generator alone. The hunter choosing to trick a velociraptor by putting his head on a log. Hammond bringing his grandchildren here. It's all dumb decisions that lead to traumatic events. And why don't we get more angry at this? It's because we've seen this already. We've seen this kind of scenario before in chaos movies. They were super popular in the 90s and nobody questioned it. And with these movies continually coming out, we see the same formula of people making dumb decisions and that dinosaurs getting constantly dumber and dumber. And I wish, in the sense of originality, we could get a Jurassic Park movie that took what we knew and made it smarter, where characters made the smart decisions. And even despite that, as Ian Malcolm would say, life finds a way. A dinosaur learns how to adapt to his surroundings, and that's what the first movie did. It made these dinosaurs intelligent. It made us fear these guys because they could actually problem solve, rather than fearing the alien in Alien because he's just a monster. We feared these dinosaurs because they were smart. They could outthink us. But in a series where people are constantly making dumb decisions, you can't root for the humans anymore. You're rooting for the dinosaurs because the dinosaurs are making smart decisions. And where's the logic in that? Which is the problem with Jurassic Park 3, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Jurassic Park 2, and even Jurassic Park 1. We keep making the dumb decisions. And in a way, it mirrors life. We consistently make dumb decisions, even though we should be learning from them. And I guess that's why Jurassic Park sits so well with audiences today. Because we can sympathize with them making these dumb decisions. We can even sympathize with them not making these dumb decisions. But they make decisions that we question whether or not we would make ourselves in the scenario. And granted, there's some decisions that are just flat out idiotic. But we still go through the motions and we learn from ourselves. We learn from from our past mistakes. And I feel like Jurassic World could get a new second wind if they just decided to go with smarter characters. Jurassic Park has already come and went. Its popularity is still through the roof. With its hit and misses in terms of sequels, that's anybody's guess. But it created this environment that I want to see again, and I hope to see again. And I really am, despite Fallen Kingdom's track record, I'm actually looking forward to the new movie coming out. Whenever that is, considering this is quarantine. But I can't wait to see these movies to come back into the fray. And come back in a way that we haven't seen before. And despite it all, even with... it's the same problem with Star Wars. I want to see where it ends. I'm not exactly thrilled with the story so far, but they've set up the story nonetheless, and I want to see where it ends. So, with that, Jurassic Park comes to a close. And next week, we'll be talking about Jurassic World and its sequels. And for the life of me, I'm not going to try and complain about it as much. Because regardless of how you look at it, you can't deny that it had its moments. It had some really cool ideas in it, with some hammy actors thrown in here and there, but so did Jurassic Park. And we're going to see that kind of style come back in a big way. Because it's Hollywood. They learn. That's how we got Jurassic Park. We had some bombs before that, but Jurassic Park was something new. And while it's been franchised, I feel like we're going to see something new with it later on. So with that, I'm going to come to a close on this week's podcast. Join us next week where we talk about Jurassic World. And I don't know what else to say other than thank you guys for tuning in. Please, if you guys are watching this on Spotify, don't forget to follow us. Give us a like. Check us out on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, comment. Check out the other videos. I put them up here. I have like a little subscribe thing over here for you guys listening only to the audio. I'm pointing to the left side of me where I'm going to put a couple video filters in later on. But again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I want to see you guys next week. So thank you very much for tuning in. And without further ado, I'm going to bid you guys farewell. See ya.